What's up guys, Dan here, and in this video we're going to be going over a recent deal we just closed where we were able to buy a triplex seller finance with only $5,000 down and 0% interest with a 10-year term loan. Let's go ahead and break into that deal. Guys, before we start, if you would go ahead and hit that like button down below, I would greatly appreciate it. It helps the channel a lot. Let's get into this deal so I can tell you exactly what we did, get this awesome seller finance deal that you can get to. Okay, so how did we get a $5,000 down, almost no money down, seller finance triplex multifamily in good shape, I might add, with great terms, with 0% interest, guys? How did we negotiate that deal? So I'm going to go ahead and break it down from start to finish, how we found the lead, how we went and converted that lead, how I met with him, how I negotiated with him, and then how we actually negotiated those terms and closed the deal. So I share all this with you guys, not to brag or anything, but to simply share my experiences so that you guys can go out there, do the same things, guys. I am just a regular guy. I've been in this business a little bit, but the things that I'm doing are things that you could go out and do yourself. They're not particularly complicated. They just have to be executed correctly. And these deals are out there, guys, every single day. It's just a matter of taking action and going out and get them. So let's go through this deal. So it's a Monday and I'm actually driving around going to look at some other properties, and a fellow wholesaler calls me and he's like, hey, I've got this deal and it's a triplex in a town called Warrensburg. It's he's like, the seller wants to sell. He's very interested. He is a tired landlord, determined, and he's got a triplex he wants to sell, and the price that he gave was very attractive. So I'm like, awesome, sounds like a good deal. Go ahead and set a time to meet. We can go meet with him today. We actually were able to set up a time to meet with him that very day that the lead came in, and that's important, guys. So one thing I'll note here is that with your wholesaling business or your acquisition business in general, getting speed to lead is going to make or break your business. So, as soon as you get a lead in, like whether it comes in on inbound or you talk to them on the phone and they're interested, you want to or schedule that time to talk or call them right then and go ahead and set that up. You want to get into the nitty gritty and get everything you can to figure out if they have a lot of motivation, if they're interested, and all the information you need to close that deal as soon as possible. He had said over the phone that he was very interested. The price that he gave was, I believe, $75,000 for this triplex is what he was looking for. I don't even know if he had a price at that point, but it was a triplex in a town that we liked. So it sounded like a good deal to me. So we went out and checked it out. Okay, so fast forward a few hours, get there. The seller is a nice old gentleman that's owned the triplex for 25 years or so. So that means that he's got it paid off. We talked to him. And guys, what I do is I had one of my business partners with me to go check it out. And, the things that I'm looking for whenever I go out to inspect a property is obviously I'm looking for the condition of the property and to see, what condition is in. And also I'm looking for things like, does the seller have the property paid off? That means that if they do, there's a lot of equity. And so that you could buy it deeper, right? As well as, I'm trying to build rapport with the seller and figure out what his motivation is, figure out why he's selling. Because a lot of times, sellers don't tell you the reasons that they may want to sell up front. So, by building rapport, by kind of establishing that, one, I am a legitimate buyer, a legitimate investor to talk to, by the questions that I ask, like I'm asking everything like, what is the age of your mechanicals? Like, how are the tenants? Things like that, like asking questions that another investor would want to know. And then also asking him, hey man, why are you selling? Like, tell me the story, catch me up to speed with this property. Like asking open-ended questions about the property is key to getting to know the seller and them getting to know you and you learning the things you need so that you can give them the right offer and the right solution. It's all about getting to know your buyer, figuring out what they need, what they want, and then tailoring a solution to fit that. We go around the property. It's in very good condition overall. It's very small triplex, 3 units. 2 of them are 1 bed, 1 bath, and they're about 300-ish square foot. So very small units, but they were both pretty clean. Would not need anything more than like a very basic tenant turnover and a clean to get them renting again. And then the bottom one was a 2 bed, 1 bath. It was about double the size, so about 600 square foot. And that one needed a lot more. The tenant in there was just very dirty, not treated the unit very right, but nothing very was up with it really. So it just needed needed, floors, paint, a deep clean, maybe some new appliances, probably under a $5,000 remodel for that one. And so all in, your rehab on this place is going to be about 7 to 10,000, depending on how well we do it. This is a pretty lower end rental market, safe area, but just it's more rural, so it's lower end. The rents are low, and so you don't really need to make it super nice to get the rent rates you want. What I did, I went around this. I crunched some numbers really fast. This is probably rent. The guy had it rented for $300 a unit, which is extremely cheap, even for this town. Come to find out, and we suspected at the time that the people weren't really performing, they weren't paying the rent, and that was just due to some of the things he was saying. You could pick up on some of these cues. Like I asked questions like, how are the tenants? Are they paying? And he's like, man, they're a little behind. Things like that indicate that they're probably a lot behind. And the reason he's selling is because he, is not getting any money from this place and wants to get rid of it. And he also, a lot of these guys, like he doesn't want to kick his tenants out. A lot of these old landlords, they don't want the confrontation. They don't know how to manage their tenants and stuff. And so they might not even want to kick the tenants out. And they would rather sell the property, be done with it, than have to go through that whole process. So I determined all that. And at the time, he wanted $75,000 cash for the property. Now this property is probably, I would say, a 150 to 170 ARV. It'd probably rent for about 1,700, very comfortably 1,700 to probably 1,800. That's, or 1,900, probably 500 to 550 for the 1-bed, 1-bath, and then probably 600 to 700 for the 2-bed, 1-bath. So you're getting a 1,700 to 1,900 rent. On this building, you don't pay any utilities except for trash, which is like $12 a month. So virtually no utilities on that, and very simple units. Everything has their own washer dryer, separate utilities. So good property, but that's beside the point. So determine the ARV. This guy wanted 75. This is a slam dunk deal, even on a cash deal. I would buy this property. If I can buy it for 75, be into it for 85, and it's worth maybe, like, let's just say conservatively 150 on the back end, then right there, that's a great deal. So you're into it. If you're into it for 85, then you're into it for 56% on a cash deal. So that's 56% of ARV, which is a fantastic deal cash. But me being the savvy investor, I'm like, well, this guy, he has no mortgage. I asked him, and I always ask this to basically every seller I talk to. I was like, would you, and this is how I preface it. So this is important, is when I go in, I'm trying to ask if they'll do seller financing. But I've tried this in the past, and I think where a lot of guys go wrong when they try to ask if people will do seller finance is that they don't talk about cash. They go straight to seller finance, which indicates to the seller that you're broke and that you don't have any money, and therefore you're not, a serious buyer. So like, you want to buy something on payments, typically you're broke. So the way to approach the seller and offer and see if they'll do seller finance is this, how I say it. So I would be like, hey, Mr. Seller, so normally we do buy things cash, but right now, I generally ask if you're willing to payments, because, for me right now, going to the bank, getting an 8% rate, like rates are just really high right now. It's very difficult for me to make things cash flow on bank loans. So normally I do pay cash, but I always ask if folks are willing to take payments, because it can work out better for you. You don't have to pay the taxes. You don't have any, tax. You don't have any depreciation left. You're gonna have to pay tax on that entire 75,000. It may make sense for you. You can make a return on your money. Would you consider that? So that's what I always ask people. So he was very favorable to it. He's like, yeah, I would, consider seller finance. What would you offer me? And that's generally where people are gonna leave it. They just want your offer. Seller finance is so creative. You can do anything. So there's really no grounding point. What I try to do is look at their situation. So this gentleman is like in his early 80s, so I know he's probably not going to be around much longer. Odds are he's probably not going to be around in 10 years, and he knows that. And so, but on the same, that doesn't mean he's not going to do seller finance, because his kids can inherit that loan and, they can pay them. So what I did is we go back. He wants 75,000 cash. What we do is, and I want to do seller finance on this deal because this property is going to be very high cash flow, and it needs a very little capital expenditure. So there's really very little rehab. So I don't have to take very much money out of my pocket in order to renovate this property. If it needed a lot of rehabs, I wouldn't even try seller finance, because it's not worth it for me if I have to take a lot of money out of my pocket to do renovations. What we did is we went back, and basically I always try to structure things around the payment, and then I want to get as little interest as possible. So ideally 0% interest. Ideally I'm putting it on a 30-year fully amortizing term, and ideally I'm putting zero money down. That's the ideal circumstances that I start from, and I work backward from there. So on this one, what I did is I came up with a 20-year term, and because the balance was so low on this deal that it really wasn't going to matter if I put it on a 30 or a 20. Payment was going to be very similar. So if it's so similar, I usually reduce the amortization because I like to pay stuff off quicker. So I put it on a 20-year note, 0% interest on a 10-year balloon. Okay, so what a balloon balloon is basically you have your payments are spread out over that 20 years, but at the 10-year mark, you pay off the balance of the loan, whatever that is. So in this case, what I did is we put $5,000 down. That's usually what I default to is 5,000. You could try for lower, but we've done 5,000 in the past. It's enough to where people feel like you have skin in the game, but it's really not a lot from a proportional standpoint for most stuff. And most people they don't really care about 20,000 down. They just want to know that you have skin in the game. So 5,000 is usually like, okay, this guy's got some money in this deal. He's probably not going to walk away. I'll try for lower on future deals, but 5,000 seemed fair for this one. And I want it to be strong so it doesn't look like we don't have any money. So 5,000 cash down on a 0% interest for 20 years, 10-year balloon so that he can get paid all of this money at 10 years. That payment came out to $293 principal only, guys. So no interest. Okay. And this is at a time right now where it's costing, I have to get a loan for about 8% or more right now at any commercial bank. So what I did to present that is I did, hey, I'll offer you 75,000. Or what I did is I always start with the cash, right? So you always want to offer cash first. And then this situation, I would offer the cash and the seller finance at the same time because the seller indicated that he wanted both options. And this seller is savvy investor. This isn't going to trip him up having to decide, right? He knows what he's doing. He can make a decision. Now, if this is just Joe Six-Pack, distressed seller, I'm usually going to offer them just cash and focus on that. And then if that gets rejected, then I'm going to go terms. But in this case, this is another investor, a savvy individual. I'm going to offer both at the same time. I'm like, hey, me and my partner talked it over, Mr. Seller. Here's what we can do. We can offer you 55,000 cash, or we can offer you 75,000, but it's going to be on terms. So what we can do is put $5,000 down and get you monthly payments of $293 for 10 years with paying off that balance at year 10. So get that 10-year balloon there. And so I let that sit there and he's like, okay, I like that. Would you write that up? What does that look like for me? And he didn't even really ask about the interest rate. He was just like, he didn't mention it. And I was like, well, that's going to be, so what we're doing is we're giving you a higher price than what we can offer cash. That's your interest. Then we're going to go ahead and stretch that over 20 years. That's 70,000 divided by 20 years, which if you do that calculation, it comes out to $293. And then we're going to go ahead and pay you that balance at year 10. So we're going to make monthly payments from close until year 10. And at year 10, we're going to go ahead and refinance or pay it off. And you're going to get the rest of that money. And so he's like, okay, I like it. Why don't you go ahead and write those up and send it to me and I'll talk it over with my wife. Okay, sounds good. So I think I wrote it up for him. And I think, that day or the next day, he was like, let's go ahead and do the seller finance. I want to go ahead and do that. What we did on that one is instead of a true seller finance, we did a contract for deed, which is the exact same thing basically, except we don't technically take title until at year 10, we pay them off. But with contract for deed, at least in Missouri and virtually any other place in the country, the same as you owning the property. You have control of the asset. You can sell it. You can refinance it. You can rent it. You can take depreciation. You can take everything. You have equitable interest in the property, and therefore you are basically the rightful owner. At that point, the deed holder essentially turns into the bank. So it's literally the same thing as seller finance. It just makes the owner feel safer because he still has the deed in his name. But I have to have my own insurance on it. I have to pay the taxes, everything. So that's how we did that deal. So let's review. So what we did is we went at it with cash and we offered him a low cash offer because I wanted him to take the seller finance offer on this one. This is going to be a lot better for me and a lot better for him if we do seller finance, because I'm going to keep this as a rental for a long time. I want a low payment. So guys, think about that. We're going to have, let's just say our PITI, principal, interest, tax, and insurance, we're all in at maybe $500 a month. And we're going to be making about $1,700+ a month in rent on this place. So that's over a $1,200 spread. Now we're going to have some maintenance and stuff, but this thing is going to be an absolute cash cow. We're probably going to net $800 a month in net cash flow to our pockets every month on this deal on a super cheap triplex that's worth $100. And not only that, we're going to be making all that cash flow, but the place is going to be worth $150,000 to $170,000. So we're going to have made probably an extra $80,000 to $100,000 in equity in that property as soon as we get that stabilized and rented. So real quick, I want to go over why that guy did that. So we learned after we closed, and this is what we suspected, so it wasn't a big deal, but basically all the tenants were not paying rent and he was collecting nothing. So he was charging $300 a month per unit, but only one of the units was actually paying. So literally our payment of basically $300 a month, the same as what he was currently collecting, and he didn't have any of the headache, any of the work. And so he's like, I'm just going to sell this thing, get my $5,000 and get these payments, let these young guys, mess with this, and I'm gonna be out of the game. I've made my money. Like, I want them to win. It works for us. So we went and got a property manager. We're in the process of changing over those tenants and renovating those units right now. But that is why that guy did that, is because he didn't want to deal with the tenants, and the value was getting that payment and then passing that along to his kids, I'm sure, without any hassle. So guys, that's how we structured that deal. I hope you learned a lot. If you have any questions, please go ahead and drop a comment down below, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And with that, guys, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.